Lesson 36 is going to cover trinomial factoring when a does not equal 1. So today we'll have an a value that is not 1. You're going to use the same concept as yesterday. Also applying lesson 34, factoring by grouping. So we're going to tie a couple things together here. When you have a trinomial in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, you need to find two integers like you did yesterday, m and p, and you did that yesterday. Same thing here. You'll have to have a sum of b. The only difference today is that you're going to have a product of c, and then once you get that product of c, it allows you to write it in this form, ax squared plus mx plus px plus c, where m and p are our integers, and then we go ahead and we factor by grouping. So if we look at this first term, what they give you, here's the trinomial. That trinomial, notice our a value is 5. It is no longer 1. Yesterday it would have been 1 and you would have had x squared minus 13x plus 6. No longer that way. Once you notice this, the next thing that you'll want to do is go ahead and find that product of AC as mentioned above. Well, A is 5 and C is 6, so you get AC is 30. After I do that, I like to go ahead and figure out my M and my P. My M and P, when added together, they're going to give me that B value. Well, if you look at the B value is negative 13. So what I do next is I go ahead and I list off a bunch of those factors. 1 and 30, we'd say 2 and 15, 3 and 10, and 5 and 6. I look at this, and this trinomial here is minus plus, and when you have a minus plus, as noted in yesterday's assignment, your binomial is going to be a minus minus. So what I do is I change these. Here's that minus minus right there. Okay, this is a positive 5x squared as is over here. This is a positive 6x as is over here. So here's where your minus minus comes into play. Now, this is our only option, 3 and 10, to give us that sum of b, which is a negative 13. Hence, the minus minus will get us to that negative 13. From there, we're going to go ahead and use the rules of factoring by grouping, as you see below. So we'll walk you through incomplete here with a couple examples. Example A, we have 7x squared plus 29x plus 4. First things first, when I come to the problem that I like to do is I like to get in the habit of writing out actually this form right away. I like to put that pattern out there right away. ax squared plus mx plus px plus c. So here's our ax squared. So I write down 7x squared. Now what I look at is the trinomial piece. This is a plus plus. If it's plus plus, your binomial has to end up plus plus. So I'm going to say plus, and that'll be some number that we need to find out, plus some number that we need to find out. So there's my plus plus piece. The last thing is I go ahead and I put my plus 4 down. Okay, so then I go ahead and I figure out, all right, what has the product of AC? Well, AC, when multiplied together, A times C will give us 28. Next, I go ahead and I like to list off some of those factors. 1 and 28, we'd have 2 and 14, and we would have 4 and 7. From then, I need to go ahead and determine, all right, when added together, what's going to give me the B value? And that B value is positive 29. So notice my signs. This is plus, plus. So both of these values over here are going to be positive values. When added together, this would give me the 29, this would give me 16, and this would give me 11. So my only option would be that. Now, since it's both plus plus, it's interchangeable. It doesn't matter if I put 1 in the first spot or the second spot. I just need to put it there. Now, remember, this is really 29x. So I need to put down 1x plus 28x. So when added together, it gives me that 29x. And again, as mentioned before, they're both plus, so those are interchangeable. So now you have that 4 terms there. Remember, in order to factor by grouping, we need 4 more terms. So we have our 4 terms. Next, I go ahead and determine, can I factor this by grouping? Well, it looks like this first group I can group together and factor something out. The next group I could factor or group and factor something out. I look in the first group I'm able to factor out an x. When I factor out an x, I'm left with 7x plus 1. Drop down my addition there. Look in my second group. The second group I can numerically factor out a 4, and I'm left with 7x plus 1. Remember, when factoring by grouping, 4 more terms is the first rule. The second one is I'm able to factor something out of both groups. And the last is I need to come up with 2 identical factors. And look at this, we do. 7x plus 1 are 2 identical factors. So my answer in this problem would be x plus 4 and 7x plus 1. And if you actually FOILed it, you would figure out that you would end up with the trinomial stated above, the 7x squared plus 29x plus 4. Next example here, we have 5x squared plus 13x plus 6. Again, I'm going to go ahead and apply the pattern. So I have 5x squared I'm going to write out. I see my trinomial is plus plus. Therefore, it is going to be plus something and plus something. And last is plus 6, so I'm going to go ahead and tag on plus 6. Find out your AC. AC, the product of AC, well, A and C would give me 30. So I'd have 1 and 30. We would have 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. Remember, when added together, we need to come up with our B value, which is a positive 13. Doesn't matter order again because we have the plus plus here. So on the side here, our product of AC, when we add 2 together, the only one that's going to give us the sum of 13 would be 3 and 10. Again, don't forget the x. Okay, because when you add these terms together, we need to come up with this term right there, 13x. If you just put 3 and 10 in there, that's only 13, not 13x like we need. Once we get it there, we can go ahead and factor by grouping. So I'm going to group the first set together, group the second set. First set, I can go ahead and factor out an x, and I'm left with 5x plus 3. Drop down my plus sign. In the second group, I can actually go ahead and factor out a 2. When I factor out a 2, I wind up with 5x plus 3. Notice again I have the 2 identical terms here. So my answer would be x plus 2 and 5x plus 3. Example C changes slightly. The only difference here is you notice that in that trinomial we don't have a plus plus. So this is the whole reason why I like to write out that pattern, is for this purpose. So I'm going to go ahead and start writing that pattern out right away. And we have 3x squared. I see that I have a minus plus. So applying that table from yesterday, when you have a minus plus, you're going to wind up with 2 minus values in the binomial. So I'd have a minus some number, and I'd have a minus some number. And then I would need to go ahead and tag on that positive 20. So the next thing, go ahead and figure out your AC. AC. When we multiply that together, we get 60. And I'm going to go ahead and write out some of the common factors. So we'd have 1 and 60. And you don't have to do this every time. You guys are going to be, you guys are probably going to be able to figure out this in your head. But if you do get stuck, it's always nice to write a few of these out, so you can rule things out or figure it out. So there's my AC values. Now remember, when I add these together, I have to come up with that B value. That B value is negative 17. So when I fill these in here, up in these spots here, they're going to be two negative values that I add together. So when I add them together, I'm going to get that negative 17. And the only way I can do that is by stealing these two down here, the 5 and the 12. So I'm going to go ahead and throw the 5 here. Don't forget the x, and the 12 here. So when I add those together, I get negative 5x and I get a negative 12x, so just give me that negative 17x. Next, go ahead and factor by grouping. So I'm going to group the first set. The second set, when I group it, remember what we like to do here. Change this into a positive and make this a negative. Show that that is a negative 12x. So now we go ahead. First set, what can we factor out here? Well, we can factor out an x. When we factor out an x, we're left with 3x minus 5. The second group, if I look up here, I can go ahead and I'm going to drop that plus sign down. I'm going to factor out a 4. When I factor out a 4, I get a negative 3x plus 5. Now notice when I look at this here, I do not have two identical. This is a 3x minus 5. This is a negative 3x minus 5. So what a lot of you may have already chose or saw this right away, that actually I really need to factor out a negative 4. If you didn't, don't sweat it. It's not a big deal because I can just go ahead and factor out a negative 1 now. So I see that in this second group I really need to factor out a negative 1 out of that. So when I factor out the negative, this is now a negative 4. It is now no longer negative 3x, it is a positive 3x. It is no longer a positive 5, it is a negative 5 when I factor that 1 out. And again, another way to double check is go ahead and FOIL that back in, and you should wind up with what you had previously. So it's just another way to double check here. So now I have those two common factors, so now I'm going to go ahead and write it out. I have x minus 4 would be 1. And my second group would be 3x minus 5. We'll jump over to these other two examples here, a few examples. I want you to go ahead, pause the video, and give these a shot here. In the first example, I went ahead and applied that pattern first right away. I see that this is plus a negative, therefore I should have a plus a negative. Notice here, this is a negative 8, so I wrote minus 8 in the end. That's a big step there. Next, I went ahead and listed a few factors off, and I found out right away that I know I'm going to use 2 and 24. So I stopped right there because that's going to give me that b value. Notice it's positive 22, so I need to make sure that I get a positive, so I need to make sure that 24x would go first because it's positive 24. Take away that 2x. From here, go ahead and factor by grouping. So after factoring by grouping, we wound up with 6x minus 2 and x plus 4. Applied the pattern, found out AC is 300. We need to get a sum of b of negative 35. Next, go ahead and factor by grouping, which we leaving us with 5y minus 10 and 2y minus 3. Example C, hopefully you didn't sweat over this one too long, but you notice that when we write out that pattern, we have minus plus. Minus plus is going to give us the minus minus. So both terms will be minus minus, and then our b value is negative 3. Well, if they're both minus minus, this will give us negative 21. This is going to give us negative 12, and this is going to give us negative 9. So nothing is going to work there. So what you need to know is that this trinomial is actually already prime. It can't be factored. So that's what we just kind of state. It can't be factored. And this concludes lesson 36, factoring when a is not 1.